Good morning, everyone. My name is Armando Seay. I am a co-founder and director of an organization that we call MISI. It stands for the Maryland Innovation and Security Institute, but we like to go by MISI because of the global nature of what we do here for the nation, the next generation of cyber defenders and warriors, as well as the cyber community at large. Our organization was founded about 4 years ago with the express purpose of targeting non-traditional academic and next generation resources associated with the latest innovations and problem-solving skills associated with cybersecurity. Today, we're going to get into several topics. My discussion here is going to be brief, and then we're going to enter into a actual physical cyber demonstration that's kind of pretty much show in real time why cybersecurity is so important, why it's an ever evolving challenge for the nation. We're in a connected society. Our society thrives on its freedoms and its communications capabilities, its use of the internet and various applications that drive our social and business lives. Frankly, I would proffer that it controls our lives for many people, although it probably should not. Our freedom and our use of these technologies, this cyberspace interconnectivity that we have, where all of our information is traveling across cyberspace into different repositories, whether we allow it to happen, whether we even have a choice in happening, whether we even read the terms of use on the various applications that we download to the ever powerful devices such as our cell phones that are controlling our lives. Today, when we enter our homes or we buy new technology, the Internet of Things is rapidly taking over, and whether we want to or not, communicating stories about our whereabouts, what we buy, what we like. Frankly, even what we're cooking and what's in your refrigerator and whether your refrigerator is empty or not. Those of you who've bought appliances, if you can even get an appliance these days because of the supply chain shortage, which is something else that I will address. The minute you bring them into your house and it recognizes there's a network, it starts chattering. The other day, I looked at my phone, I looked at the Wi-Fi network, and all around me in my neighborhood, I could see my neighbor's stove, refrigerator, cameras, baby monitors, alarm systems, even their cell phones. Why do I want to connect to Barbara's cell phone? Because Barbara's telling me that her cell phone's open for me to potentially send a message to her. This very use and powerful technology that automates our life and makes it simpler is also a major threat to our society. The freedoms that we cherish are constantly under attack. At this organization, one of the things that we tackle relative to cyber, and we're getting ready to enter heavily into it again, is, for instance, election security. Our adversaries have learned that our ubiquitous use of the internet, our quick ability to like something or dislike something or to forward or tweet or retweet something is great for our nation in many respects, but it's also one of the poisonous tools that are rapidly being used against us by our nation's adversaries. For example, our adversaries have figured out that because we are a free society, that if they develop disinformation campaigns, for instance, that use the internet, that those disinformation concepts, even with the semblance of looking legitimate, are rapidly retweeted by our adversaries all across the world. Our top 3 adversaries in the area of disinformation and cyber presently are sometimes called by a nickname or an acronym, RIC or RIC, Russia, Iran, and China. We obviously have other adversaries, but these are our most powerful competitors on the internet in terms of influencing our society by using cyberspace to turn neighbor against neighbor, city against city, religion against religion. But not only that, to use our free and ubiquitous use of technology to deliver devastating and debilitating cyber attacks against critical infrastructure, against small and large businesses, against the power grid, against the food supply, against maritime assets that, frankly, our nation relies on, as we can all tell right now, to deliver most of the goods that we rely on to sustain our lives. There's a chip shortage. That chip shortage is right now is caused by two things: factories that shut down during the pandemic. If you look at the pandemic as a viral cyber attack, imagine a cyber attack that causes manufacturing to shut down, critical manufacturing to shut down, the ability to get goods from their source of origin to their endpoint, whether it be an auto manufacturer, for the nation's defense, a weapon systems manufacturer, to hospitals, to schools, to grocery stores. We're seeing what a pandemic shutdown can do. A cyber attack to critical infrastructure and the nation's dependency on, frankly, a substantial amount of manufacturing that occurs overseas is our Achilles heel. And today, one of the examples that we're going to give you is exactly how easy it is to debilitate a major source of economic health for any community in the nation. Right now, we're seeing amazing amount of backlogs at the Port of Los Angeles, at the Port of Long Beach. Those two ports alone are responsible for a substantial part of the economic life of not only a large state like California, but all the other states around it and the rest of the country that depends on goods that come over from overseas through the Pacific realm to our country. On the East Coast, we have the Port of Tampa, we have the Port of Savannah, we have the Port of Miami, Port of Baltimore, Norfolk. Not only are these ports vital to the nation's economic health, an example that I will give is the Port of Tampa is responsible for 90% of the gas and natural gas that gets delivered to the state of Florida. It comes in off of tanker ships. When there's a hurricane, myself being a Florida resident, the one thing we immediately see in the state of Florida, once everyone basically goes after all the available gas that's available at gas stations, is that ships that are delivering gas are now required or will be offshore, waiting out the storm. The flip side of that is a cyber attack that keeps a ship from coming in, or once a ship comes in, keeps it from being unloaded because of different types of attacks that can debilitate the storage tanks, can debilitate the navigation systems associated with the maritime navigation systems associated with cargo ships, ship to shore communications, ship to satellite communications, on and on and on. These are all the types of critical infrastructure attacks that our nation is experiencing at an elevated level. So I talked a little bit about how cyberspace is being used to basically turn our society upside down rather successfully. We've moved away from being overly concerned about what happens to, or what vulnerabilities may reside within a voting machine. Not saying that isn't important and is something that continuously needs to be looked at, but our nation's election systems, getting back to that topic a little bit, is diverse. There's half a dozen voting machines that are used in any particular state and jurisdiction. The states are independent in the way they manage and execute the election infrastructure. Our adversaries had figured out that that's too big of a target. All the diversity in voting machines, voting schedules, tabulation methods. What's the best way, or an easier way, to debilitate our nation's political and democratic processes? Hack the human. The human remains the weakest link to any part of cybersecurity, whether at a corporation, whether at the energy supplier, the grid supplier to your local community, the local school, hospital. Hacking the human remains the easiest attack vector, and our adversaries has figured that out. If I can hack the human, I can disrupt society at large with very low cost, ubiquitously available attacks that are available for sale. That it doesn't take a PhD in cybersecurity to launch against any particular target that an adversary wants to target. within the nation, whether it be the election security or other critical infrastructure like facilities, maritime, grid, water supply, food supply, manufacturing, and so on. These are the types of attacks that our nation are continuously experiencing on a continuous basis. You out there in the audience are the front lines to defend the nation. Being that front line requires that you get more than a really good education from a really good university or a really shiny parchment certificate that says you're Security Plus or you're CISSP or GAC certified. Those are great foundational tools. But what we've learned at our organization is that we need to prepare the next generation early, similar to the way the Israelis, who are one of the powerhouses in cybersecurity, they've realized that a small nation surrounded by enemies using below the threshold of kinetic warfare, cyber attacks that they're constantly experiencing, they have to be responsive. They have to be continuously innovative. And they realize that it has to be an all of nation and all of society approach to defensive cyber related measures for the nation. We can take a page out of the Israeli book, a small nation surrounded by enemies, seeing every nature of a possible cyber attack launch at critical infrastructure, military, manufacturing, business, so on and so forth. And they've used those attacks to turn that negative influx of threats to the nation to become one of the most innovative societies when it comes to cyber solutions and technology. That's driven by that all-of-nation approach, where they look at the students starting at elementary school and they follow them through their high school career. Israel has a mandatory compulsory military service, but as they're watching, the nation's young folks progress through their academic and learning, which includes cyber and strong STEM curriculums, and for that nation, they're picking out the bright stars, the young people that are showing a natural, organic aptitude to pivot over into cyber. As they get to the age of compulsory military service, they take those young people and they place them into the Israeli defense cyber units. They spend their 2 years, if that's the minimum, it's the minimum that they're required to stay. They could stay longer, but when they separate from the military and they go out back into the civilian workforce, they use that academic training, that real world cyber defense and offensive experience that they've had supporting and defending their nation, and they turn that into powerful entrepreneurial ventures and essentially unicorns in cybersecurity that the world begins to invest in, or frankly buys. Our nation has bought here in the U.S. major cybersecurity technology, particularly in the area of operational technology, OT, also known as control systems, as the Department of Defense likes to call it, SCADA, industrial control systems. So that's sort of the lexicon related to critical infrastructure, industrial control related systems. So if you look at companies like Nozomi, that's out in Europe, you look at companies like Armis, which is this Israeli company, now it's a US company, Indigi, that was bought by Tenable. I could go on and on. These are powerful technology companies that develop their acumen defending a small nation against critical infrastructure cyber attacks. And now they're part of the portfolio of assets that our nation is using to defend the grid, to defend manufacturing, to defend healthcare, and so on and so forth. OT technology, or operational technology, and its vulnerabilities and its interconnectivity to IT is becoming a lethal weakness for our nation. We've realized it after the 2017 or so attack on Ukraine that debilitated the electrical grid for the country there in Ukraine. Ukraine has also been subject to a number of nation-state cyber attacks. If you recall, the power grid ran out and the nation, they were not able to get it back up using all the technology that was available. They had to, luckily they had the old manual systems still associated with the grid, and they were able to restore the power by going back to the old school way of running the grid. They were hit again with a ransomware attack. Ransomware remains one of the #1 attack vectors across the world. It's difficult to defeat. I would proffer that there's a lot of companies that say they can detect it. Yeah, you can detect bits and pieces of it, but can you wholesale prevent it? I don't think we've found a way to wholesale prevent it yet, depending on the way a network is designed. Unfortunately, a lot of our networks aren't designed to resist the prolific way ransomware can attack a network. But when the Ukraine was hit with the Petya and other related attacks, it impacted the world through the collateral damage that was done to companies such as Maersk, the global shipping conglomerate that ships so much of the world's goods across the globe as they go from one port to another. It hit one of the US's pharmaceutical companies, and one or two other companies became collateral damage off of an attack that was aimed at a particular critical infrastructure target, which was in one instance the power grid for Ukraine, but in the second instance a financial application that the country used to manage international shipping and export and import activities, which is why Maersk was hit and why some U.S. companies were also hit as that ransomware basically went wild. We've all heard of Stuxnet, another attack from a number of years ago that debilitated particular countries' nuclear ambitions. OT technology is a weak area for the country. We see it every day. Here we train warfighters, we train college students, we train high school students, and one of the things we insist on is exposing them to operational technology. What we tell anyone who comes to our facility is, you arrived at our facility, as you approached our parking lot, there was a camera watching you. As you came in, there was an access control system that let you in. If you go up and down the elevators, there's an OT operational system that's controlling the elevators. When you're touring our labs and other elements of our facility, if you look towards the ceiling, which most people don't when they're coming to a facility, there are environmental control systems, there are fire protection systems, there are surveillance systems, there are chemical sensing units. All of those things are connected to the OT world. It's Internet of Things, it's industrial Internet of Things, and today's world, today's interconnected world, ties these systems together, whether we know it or not. And this is why operational technology and understanding how it works and how it connects to IT, how it connects to IoT and IoT is so important to the nation. So we take students from all around the country here using that Israeli model of, if we catch them young and we inform them and we can take what may seem like complicated technology and relate it to everyday things such as traffic lights. How does the water get to the pipe so that you can dispense it from your sink? When you flip a switch in your house, how does the grid work? Teaching these basic elements of critical infrastructure, cyber, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, and IT, and tying them together using common everyday concepts is what an all-of-nation approach has to undertake as a mission. Cyber is a broad field. When we engage with academic institutions all over the country, as we are currently doing, as we've been doing since inception, we sit down with department heads of computer science departments and IT, and we get into deep subjects about how do we produce a better graduate that can go sit at a desk at Cyber Command or at your local energy company and actually understand what's going on beyond their book knowledge, beyond their certifications. The strong belief that we have here as an organization is that we have to go back to the way we used to do things in the olden days. For instance, people learn how to execute technical skills through an apprenticeship model. You get foundation at the academic level, and then you undertake an apprenticeship that teaches you how to do it. The example that I always give is, last thing I want is a heart surgeon to operate on my heart if they've never actually operated and they've only studied it in a book. Okay. Same thing applies to cyber. We have to train for the real world. Theoretical knowledge is not sufficient to produce this type of cyber skills that we need. The other area of cyber education and all of nation approaches that it doesn't take a college degree to become a cyber defender or a offensive cyber resource to the nation. Some people are, born this way, as famous singer was said, they get up in the morning being organically talented with the ability to absorb and execute a phenomenal amount of information and then turn it into actionable. Some of the best exploits that have been launched against various nations and companies weren't developed by someone with an extensive academic background. They were typically developed by someone who ran a gaming operation out of their basement and knows how to load balance servers and connect to the cloud and understands Wi-Fi and power, space, and cooling dynamics, and turns that knowledge, unfortunately, into deadly and devastating cyber attacks. But I would say we need an all nation. We need the PhDs, we need the certifications, but we also need that young person that may not be suitable for college, but is organically talented to join the workforce. I'm happy to see that companies like Apple and Google and even Facebook, or should I call them Meta? I'm going to call myself Zeta, but and I said Google, but their name that hasn't been well adopted yet is technically Alphabet, right? So, but these companies have realized that if we're going to close the gap in cyber skills, both offensively and defensively, we can't just focus on recruiting from the university community. We got to recruit at the community college. We got to recruit at the high school level. We have to create apprenticeships and better internships. I hate it when I see a college student who's had an internship, corralling kids at a summer camp, and their field of study is computer science because there wasn't enough internships available for them to apply their academic pursuit in a real world internship. That's one of the things that we do here as part of our partnership with NSA and Cyber Command, is to provide real world training. And I invite you guys to connect with us, connect your students, connect your young people. As we announce our internships, both virtual and physical, we advertise them via our website. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on theoretically what I see as the challenge that we see here every day. Real quickly, I'm going to run through before my partner in the offensive and defensive cyber comes to execute the cyber demonstration to allow you to see why operational technology and critical infrastructure cyber is so important. I'm going to get into real quickly who our organization is. So Joseph, if you can tee up our slide there. We're going to put it into play mode here real quickly. Here we go. So today's presentation, technical presentation, so you can hear, so I can stop talking, is going to be actually about maritime cyber. Joseph, next slide, please. Our organization, as I mentioned, is MISI. We started out in about 20,000 square feet of operational space. In less than 4 years, we're now somewhere in the neighborhood of around 70,000 square foot of incubator, lab, collaboration, and conference space. Our partners are the world, the partners of the United States government, both defense and intelligence and law enforcement globally, but also domestically, the intelligence community, organizations like CISA, Cyber Command, NSA, Air Force, Special Operations Command, and all of the combatant commands that support U.S. Cyber Command, Army Cyber, Navy, Marforce Cyber, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. We've developed a pretty robust ecosystem here at MISI that involves academic partners, as well as I mentioned, global partners. We also are very spread out across a number of states, helping the nation's supply chain, particularly the defense supply chain, become more cyber resilient and to comply with the emerging cyber regulations, such as the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, the NIST 800-171. These regulations are designed to secure controlled unclassified information, which is something that's continuously leaking out to our adversaries via the nation's supply chain. And frankly, we have to put a stop to it. We have to ensure that when the Department of Defense and the government contracts for solutions and services and technology, that gets done in the most secure way possible. And that's what those policies are about. So this is just a little bit about our ecosystem in terms of the organizations that we work with across the nation. Next slide, Joseph. We're an event space conference. The world comes here. World-renowned authors like Andy Greenberg, one of my favorite books, was written by Andy Greenberg. We just recently had a nationwide conference on artificial intelligence and quantum, fostered by University of Texas, San Antonio. We run rapid innovation prototyping events to detect new technologies and solutions against various cyber challenges of our partners. And that's what you see here. Last year, we ran an event called Hack the Building. We had 3,000 participants from all across the nation. And we invited a team from Israel to be our blue team to watch the various tactics and techniques associated with the various hacking attempts at this 150,000 square foot building that was lent to us by a company called Corporate Office Properties Trust. And we hacked that building from the outside all the way to the inside, everything from the power generators in the parking lot, the elevators, the surveillance cameras, the access control systems, the fire suppression systems, everything was in play. It was a great event. Next slide, Joseph. What do we do here? We train our next generation warfighter and cyber defender. What you're looking at here is obviously the elements of an industrial control rated system. This is actually a training video that we won't go into for the interest of time. But we're an education unit, a conference facility, a global gathering place for cyber critical thought leaders and experts. Joseph, next slide. You're going to probably skip over the video there. We're going to skip over the video here if we can. There we go. I talked about our deep connection to securing the nation's supply chain or the defense industrial base. This is just some of the stuff that we've done related to that topic. We not only study it, but we're actually physically involved with over 150 firms across the nation in the area of securing and making them more cyber resilient. Next slide, Joseph. As I prepare to introduce my partner here in crime, we are focusing this particular demonstration in the area of maritime cyber. We picked maritime cyber because our next big conference is going to be Hack the Port. We're going to host that in a soon-to-be-announced location in the new year. Just like our Hack the Building event, it'll be a conference, actually a cyber exercise, a physical, not theoretical cyber exercise. We may combine some tabletop components to it, but maritime cyber is becoming an increasing threat to the nation. Interestingly enough, maritime cyber depends very heavily on operational technology, which is what I mentioned at the beginning of my discussion. Lloyd's of London is a major insurer to maritime shipping companies, and they're seeing the increase in cyber attacks. In the early days, when we were looking at what was going on in maritime cyber, we all would read the headlines about cyber piracy, ships being accosted by cyber pirates physically as they would pull up to the ship and climb on. That still exists, but we're now in the new era of, if I want to disrupt an entire nation's supply chain, I need to stop the goods and services that they're ordering from overseas suppliers, international suppliers, from even getting to their shores. How do I do that? I do that by disrupting the supply chain's ability to deliver those goods to their destination. They're delivered by air, but in this case, we're talking about cyber related attacks against shipping and other container ships. These ships can come to our shores already exploited with malware that once that ship attempts to connect to the port, debilitates that port's operation. Vice versa, that port could have substantial number of vulnerabilities that migrate onto the ship. And as that ship travels from port to port, that malware is being delivered to those ports of call. The ship's navigation systems can be disrupted. The ship's operational technology, what runs the water, the power to that ship, can be disrupted, such that that ship can be sunk, can be disrupted, such that it runs into another ship or it goes aground, so on and so forth. I go back to my original premise of what's going on today with the supply chain, dealing with the pandemic, that it's akin to a cyber attack on our nation's supply chain. I won't bore you with all the details so we can get to the cyber demonstration here. Next slide here. Ransomware remains one of the #1 attack vectors. It attacks the maritime industry. It can disrupt operational technology. You see the cranes in the picture here. Those cranes rely on Wi-Fi. They rely on OT technology to do their functions, to take cargo off of ships. It's how those systems know what's on a ship, what's on a container, where it should go, what truck is going to pick it up, so they can leave the port and deliver it to Walmart or your local grocery store, wherever it's going, or to Amazon, whoever it needs it. I talked about the 2017 NotPetya attack that devastated Maersk, and the unintended victims were Merck, Mondelez, and TNT Express. I can tell you that a couple of those, I won't be specific, are still in litigation trying to recover cyber insurance proceeds as a result of that attack. They're actually litigating on that. Maersk was able to recover, but there's a number of entities that weren't able to recover. Cyber insurance today is creating exclusions against what they call nation state or active wars or terrorism, cyber as terrorism, cyber as a non-kinetic act of war. So read your cyber insurance policies very carefully, because they may not cover ransomware. Another recent advent is that we have ransomware actors that are on the restricted list or sanction list of the United States government. You pay that ransom, you're potentially committing a federal offense. The nation is structuring itself such that they don't want you to pay ransom to produce more ransomware attacks against the nation, which is why we have this sanction list. Assume compromise. That's the world that we're in. I'm going to really close with that. Zero trust, which is the magic vaccine word that you hear everyone talking about. A lot of people are claiming that they have zero trust in artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. But the whole concept of zero trust is trust or not, don't trust, but definitely verify before you trust. Every connection, every process has to be tested for legitimacy in terms of function and authorization to connect to various network connected resources. And so zero trust is a national initiative. You'll continue to hear all the way to Capitol Hill in various testimonies concerning cyber. Let's go forward. We talked about the various attacks against the supply chain. I won't bore you that because I already addressed that. And as we enter the ability to go here, this comes from a document that discusses the steps associated with a cyber attack and how it can impact go from a ship to the port, to the nation's supply chain. I won't bore you with those details because you're going to see what we're talking about here in the demonstration that we're teeing up here. Let's go to the next slide. And here we go. I'm going to introduce my counterpart here. I'm going to go off to the side here, and we're going to focus on this cyber demonstration, which I hope will give you a great visual in the manifestation of a cyber attack from a true offensive cyber practitioner. Take it away.
How we doing? I want to talk to you in very straightforward, non-technical terms about what I would do if I was going to conduct offensive cyber operations against a maritime facility. It's actually surprising to think how difficult it is to relay these terms in a very basic and straightforward manner, but that's very important that we do that today, okay? So I want to focus. Let's start with the animation you see here. If I'm going to conduct operations against a maritime facility, I'm going to run reconnaissance of the facility first, just like you see in the card. I'm going to drive by I'm going to walk by. I'm going to have a team of people to do it, and I'm going to do it at different times of day. I'm going to do it in the morning. I'm going to do it in the evening, and I'm definitely going to do it on the weekends because I need to see what's live. I need to see where are the cameras, where are the guards? Can I see any computers? Do I see any handheld devices that harbor or maritime employees, Port Authority usually are using? Because these are all targets to me. Now, I'm also going to have a team, unless I'm very short on time, in which case it'll just be a solo person. We conducted an attack against our scale model city, which you're going to see at the end of my discussion here. It is not a fake attack. It was not a penetration test. It is what a nation state would do if they were actually tasked with conducting operations against a U.S. facility. But it's actually very important to understand. Armando made a very good point earlier. The same attacks would be conducted against a factory, against a industrial park, because at the core of all these different locations, the technology that powers them is the same. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to start with a radio survey. That's the first thing I do. Radio surveys tell me the actual devices that are active in the air or on the air. I'm going to use a very well-known tool to do that survey. Doesn't matter what the tool is. What matters is what it finds. If I know nothing about the air around the port, around the maritime facility, I'm going to make assumptions about it. And when I see my assumptions are either validated or invalidated, I'm going to actually act accordingly. I'm going to adjust my reconnaissance. As you see, this is what an attacker would do. They saw a network, and it was called Port Authority. That's in our scale model city. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rerun. There you go. I'm actually rerunning my scan, and I'm going to focus just on that Port Authority network, because now that I know there's a network called Port Authority, I need to know what's on that network. And when I run that second scan, I'm going to know IoT, handheld, mobiles, tablets, cameras. I'm going to know all that information. It will pop up in the technical nonsense you're going to see in this screen, but I have offline a way to convert that into English data or whatever your language of choice may be. Here we are just running the scan, and now we're seeing that data. These are devices that are in our maritime facility, our scale model city maritime facility. That's what you see in the bottom half of the screen. The longer I run this, the more I learn. It's also important to know that I haven't necessarily done anything illegal yet. What you're seeing there is power, how good of a signal is. For those of you that are old enough to remember rabbit ears on your TV, that's where that signal strength comes in. I'm going to stop that scan when I feel like I've had enough. But remember, I'm going to do it at different times of day, at different locations. And then we're going to move on to the next slide. Watch. In fact, I'm going to hold it when we get back to me. Watch me as I'm walking throughout the facility, and I'm taking and planning a device. I'm holding one in my hand. You'll see it in a minute. Those devices are going to help me with my follow-on attacks. They're small, they're battery powered, and they cost less than $100. And they are, in effect, impossible to trace. That's what I would do. And if I have the money, I'm going to drop dozens. I would put them in cars. I would hide them under tarps. Anyway, go ahead. Move on to the next slide. Now, that's what it tells me. When those devices run, that's what they tell me. They tell me about the cameras. They tell me about the laptops. They tell me about the networks. I need all that information to feed into the next step of my offensive cyber campaign, is the term I use and what I teach people to use. So go ahead to the next slide. To get on that network, I need to attack it. I am crossing the line in the United States and in other countries, especially in Eastern Europe, Western Europe. I am going to run a DAuth attack. Watch. If you're on that Port Authority network, you're kicked off. Do you see that information in the top right corner of the screen? That's information I need to collect in order to get the Wi-Fi password. How many times have you gone to a place and asked what the Wi-Fi password is? I didn't ask for it. I attacked it, and watch me crack the key with only that attack. If I collect enough data, I get the Wi-Fi key. All right, let's hold on for just a second here. We have crossed the line in the United States. We have broken the law, United States law, and we've broken state and local laws. But I want to be clear. If I have been asked, tasked, paid, ordered to attack that facility, I do not care. Please understand that attackers that target these facilities do not care. Those that do it for money, the money is more attractive than the consequence. Okay, this is not a joke. This is not a pen test. This is real. Now, what does the attack actually look like? Go ahead and play that video. Look at me in the lower left corner of the screen. There you can see me as the icon. When I launch my attack, watch. Watch how it propagates throughout that network. Every single device is kicked offline. Do you know what an attack looks like? Have you ever been on a phone that suddenly lost a connection? It's actually hard to spot. Okay, we try to teach people, not only people come for training, but visitors. We try to teach them what these things look like. You're going to see a ransomware attack at the end of this. So that's what the Wi-Fi attack actually looks like. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, we're going to pause for just a second because we want to go over the next phase. We're not going to show it to you because there's too much technical nonsense in it. We are in a phase now called recon. We did physical reconnaissance. Now we're doing network reconnaissance. We need to find servers. We need to find control systems. We need to find cameras. And if I do my job right, I'm going to attack them all. And you're never going to even know I was there until the attack is already launched. You're going to see the visual effects of some of the attacks in a minute. How long the recon takes depends on a lot of factors. How long do I have? How long, if I am low and slow, like barbecue, then there's less of a chance for me to get found. But I'm looking for three things. Okay? I'm looking for servers that house information about ships, shipping routes, containers, all that stuff. That's number one. Number two, I'm looking for control systems that power cranes, that power fuel distribution, that power water, that power electricity. I'm looking for those things. And number three, I'm looking for PCs because I am going to deploy ransomware. As part of a training session we're doing on ransomware, we had to develop our own. The story in Greek mythology is the hero Bellerophon is who defeats Chimera. Well, we have to build a Chimera in order for our students to be the hero to defeat it. Let's move on. You're going to see the first attack here. Go ahead and play. All right. I'm on the network, or whoever that is. They're on the network. They actually just bought that attack device off of Amazon. This is in our facility. This is our shipping system. We just call it SATS. This was built based off of publicly available information about what is in asset and container tracking systems. It's web-based. There's a username. There's a password. You guys have probably seen tons of sites just like this. It tracks all the information that a maritime facility needs to know how to get ships into port, how to unload containers off of port, the countries of origin or destination, and the voyages that they're going on to, especially if they're going to go to a new port after the one they're disembarking from. I've got all that information during my network reconnaissance. I also have a vulnerability of how I'm going to attack that system. I am not going to deny access to it. I am going to destroy it. Again, this is not a joke. So while we're watching the attacker work here, what does the destruction of that system mean? It means I'm going to find the server where it's running. I'm going to use an exploit, that's the term we use, to connect to that server, and I'm going to locate that web application. While we're doing that, yes, we are still over the line. We have broken the law, but you're actually going to see at the end, you're going to see Armas actually catch this attack. That's a good point to make. While you take this seriously, please make sure you know, or you're asking in the facilities where you're working, what is the security systems that we have in place? The destruction of the server comes in the form of deleting all of the records. I am not just going to delete the application. I'm going to delete the records too. Now, as we go on in our attack, we get more and more bold in our actions. You're going to see it now no longer be accessible. That all those records are gone. I sure as heck hope that that facility had a backup. Now, in the case of our test facility, we do. But if I was doing this for real, I'm also going to attack the backup. Move on to the next slide. The next one is the physically most dangerous attack that we would conduct, because this could involve the loss of life. In our test facility, we do have a crane. It does run on a control system. It does do what cranes normally do. They move containers from a source to a destination, and they do it in an automated fashion. We built a custom piece of malware, exploit, depends on what your terminology is, to attack that particular crane system. Nothing was downloaded, nothing open source, if you will. We had to build all this malware. And yes, the attackers will do that. Watch as this attacker downloads that malware, that right there, downloads that malware onto the network. And the next step is they're going to actually run it. Now, I'm going to be very serious. They understand. If it's me, I understand. If I run that attack, somebody may get hurt. Somebody may lose their life. But in all seriousness, it gets in the way of my mission success. When we run the malware, it's an even more bold attack than deleting that server you saw previously. The crane will stop working. Watch as the test crane suddenly stops working. And if you see closely, not only does the crane stop working, you're going to see something else happen in the background. Watch the lights blinking. Now the maritime facility knows something is wrong. All right, we're running out of time in order to be detected or not. Remember, I'm using cheap devices. This is a crane that actually did stop working. That's what it would look like. I have very little time left, and we're not going to take up all your time today. We're going to move immediately into the final punch. I'm going to deliver ransomware to the desktops of the employees of the maritime facility. I found them all during my reconnaissance. So the last step in my attack, and please understand it's on the order of minutes between when I launch the crane attack to when I do this, because I am out of time. Everyone's going to be looking for things. The ransomware gets delivered to the employee. Now, they may or may not know it was delivered, but when they go to do their job, to maybe look for that shipping server, to send an email, to communicate, to do whatever, that ransomware is going to run without them being able to stop it. Have you ever been subject to a ransomware attack? Would you know what to do? Look at that ransomware. That was test ransomware we built to teach people. Would you know what to do? Would you know how to react? Would you know how much time you had? This is real. This is live. This is simply something we built, so we're not dealing with a threat from the outside. Look at the attacker, us, of course, even drops instructions on the desktop. We'll come back to that in a second. All of the files are soon going to be inaccessible. Alistor is simply the name of this ransomware. It's a demon from mythology, real long time ago. Now, understand, in a real ransomware attack, you may actually think, well, if I pay, I'll get my files back. I am not joking. We're not kidding around. We may have saved the key, but we're going to delete it. The user will never get those files back, because this is not ransomware for business. This is a part of an ongoing attack, and it's to deliver a message, whatever that message may be. I sure as heck hope that there's a backup of that desktop. Well, let's say the defender, of course, would hope. The attacker wouldn't care. 3 punches. The facility is now potentially no longer operational. What happens to the ships that are waiting to dock? Where does the information go? Where do the containers go? What if those server records are truly gone? What if those machines are not usable? How long would it take for them to recover? What if this was your factory? I know some factories have to run 24 hours a day. How long would you be offline for if this was your organization? All right, so those are the 3 phases of this attack. Armando, actually, let's go through this video, and then we're going to see the local lab where that attack was conducted. Go ahead, Joseph. Make sure we can hear the audio. While he's working, what you're looking at here is the Armis platform that was plugged into this test facility and how it caught my actions. Now, This may seem a little bit outrageous to you, but I urge you to take this seriously, because the person that attacks the next port may not have sworn an oath to the Constitution like I did for whatever it is that I do in my background. My oath is to protect and defend. That person that attacks the next maritime facility, they may not have. All right, if we can't get that to play, we're going to move on. Armis does, in fact, catch me. Please go look them up on the internet. That was a very impressive action they did. They caught me within about 9 minutes on some of my techniques, but I don't want to waste any time.
Yeah, I wanted to say Armis is one of the key partners here in operational technology defense and threat detection. We are a solution agnostic organization. So when we do test and evaluations for the Department of Defense, Pentagon, whomever, we test all kinds of devices. Armis is the latest asset that has come into the facility, into our testing labs. And what we do is put it through its paces. So as my partner here mentioned, he crafted a piece of custom malware, a ransomware, not previously known to anyone. There's no signature for it out there. The goal there was to see if Armis could detect all of the various phases of the attack. The reconnaissance phase, the actual deployment of that attack. And I think we proved that Armis was one of the tools that could definitely help detect. It's still up to the individuals to defend the network once it's detected, to keep the ransomware from propagating throughout the network. That's where concepts like microsegmentation, zero trust, deny any kind of thing, concepts, least privilege, and so on and so forth come into play. The more micro-segmented, concept of containing the blast radius helps to increase the resilience of any organization, the ability to restore from an attack that's had some degree of damage, hopefully not a complete destruction and encryption of files, such as with ransomware, but your ability to recover those systems by having, using a method such as 3-2-1, 3 different backups, one hopefully off network, such that your backups can't be encrypted by the ransomware, which happens to a lot of people. They have network-based backups, and then those backups themselves are encrypted. And like I like to tell people that when if you have a safe, or I have a safe, or you have a safe, let's put it that way, and all your valuables are in that safe, and I don't know the code, but I take your safe and put it inside my safe, your jewelry and your valuables are still inaccessible to you. Even though they may not be as useful to me, I've denied you access to your own safe. So hopefully you have, other measures of recovering your data, basically. But that's an example of how even encrypting your files, if you don't have a proper incident response plan and the ability to recover, may not help you in the event that your encrypted files themselves get encrypted by an adversarial attack. Go ahead, Mark.
What you're looking at now, can they see that now, Joseph? All right, what we're going to bring up is going to be the actual scale model city that was constructed. I got very lucky. MISI granted me the ability to build this, but this was built for a very specific reason. Everything in this city, this is not for hobby enthusiasts or railroads. Everything in this city that you see, or that you're going to see, is controlled by a programmable logic controller, or a control system like you would see at that maritime facility. Go ahead. I know what you're about to do. We're going to zoom in on the actual control systems that power this city, if we can. Those control systems have been engineered with the exact same logic that we see out in the real world. Yes, there you go, right there. Each one of those control systems is responsible for a different area of the city. Specifically, pay attention to the traffic lights. Our engineers, Alikia and Major Yoon from Cyber Command, were able to use the logic that drives the traffic lights in the state of Maryland. And I would wager other states use similar logic. It's those little boxes there that power it. But every single one of these controllers is vulnerable to something. Let's zoom back out. So I want to actually close with the latest piece of malware that we've built, again, for educational purposes. That's the only reason why we do this kind of stuff. What would we do? I have been lucky that I've never had to be a part of it. I've never been subject to a large-scale cyber attack. But what would you do? What would we do if we actually had malware launched against us that could affect the way we lived? Look at that. I just launched an attack that cut the power to the whole city except for the maritime facility down in the lower right. This attack takes only 12 bytes and is almost undetectable. All I care about now, like I said before, is helping people understand this threat, helping protect them, and prevent this from happening. Does anybody have any questions? Just call them out if anybody has any.
So as we close, I'm hoping you kind of gotten an idea of what we do here at our organization. We actually run two mission accelerators. There's MISI, which is our 70,000 square foot plus facility, where we do primarily on the first floor unclassified, and other parts of the facility we do more sensitive testing and evaluation, analysis, training, both offensive and defensive. We separate what we do based on the authorities of the different parties that we work with. So I want to make that very clear. We're not teaching students to go out and hack the power grid or election systems or maritime ports or their schools and things like that. But in order to become a good cyber defender, you have to understand the tactics of an offensive cyber entity, whether it be a nation state or an individual in the basement of a building, you know, somewhere in some foreign country. And we believe strongly in that. Every once in a while, we have people that are sensitive to the fact that we teach an understanding of offense. The other thing that we get down is to the brass tacks, literally the wires and literally the screws associated with all of the different technologies that we test and evaluate here, or that we're testing, looking for solutions to challenges that our customers are bringing to us, whether it be Cyber Command, NSA, whomever, who's looking for innovative approaches and technologies. The ability to get down to the wires and the nuts and bolts of a device is a part of what I said earlier about the fact that cyber is a broad field, and it's not just a guy in the hoodie, as you saw, hacking at something. In order for that hacker to understand how to take out the way a programmable logic controller works, they have to understand that it's different than an IT system. A pure IT attack directed against an industrial control system, it's not going to have the same impact or no impact. You're wasting a lot of cycles and times, and you're probably going to be detected. The protocols are different. The way you have serial communications, you have protocols like Modbus, Profinet, DNP3, and so on and so forth. These are things that are not normally taught in a lot of IT curriculums and programs. The fact that this is a whole different world. The devices are also somewhat simplistic in nature, and they control a lot of things, whether it's food production, medical, pharmaceutical production, weapon systems, or they control the very things that could potentially kill us: elevators, airplanes, ships, so on and so forth, autonomous vehicles, which is why we take programmable logic or industrial control systems and combine it with IT and Internet of Things and industrial Internet of Things. We feel that cyber is a holistic discipline that involves a number of skill sets, whether it's electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, even psychology. A lot of people say, well, why would psychology matter in cyber? Well, one of the most prolific attacks, like I mentioned, is attacking the human. Why do we click on malware? Why do we respond to phishing attempts? Why don't we follow basic cyber hygiene and training? Well, how effective is a cyber tool in a defensive setting? Is it really helping the warfighter or defender or the person in the security operations center be more effective at detecting a cyber threat, or is it putting them to sleep? Is it putting the brain to sleep because they're focused on stimuli coming only from the screen? Those are the kinds of studies, those are the kinds of analysis, in addition to artificial intelligence and quantum and other things that we get into. I want to thank you guys for listening. Hopefully this was informative. Slightly a different approach to a keynote. We wanted to not just be a talking head, and get you guys a live demonstration of of various levels of cyber attacks using the concept of a maritime facility and the horizontal ubiquitousness of operational technology, something that we encounter in all of our lives every single day. And a lot of us don't realize that it's a different sort of technology that drives the very systems and things that we rely on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Armando,
And,
one question was asked real quick.
Sure thing.
I just saw it. The answer to the gentleman that asked the question, can we assume or trust that our files are safe when stored in Office 365? The answer is an emphatic no.
That's correct. Absolutely
not. We have malware that we wrote to demonstrate the flaws in AWS. The same flaws exist in Office 365. I'm sorry to give a negative answer, but the answer is unfortunately no.
Yeah, the race to cloud security is creating, or cloud environments is creating a single point of failure. If we're going to store everything we have in cloud, Microsoft, AWS will clearly tell you that while they put a lot of security controls around their architecture and their systems, you have your own responsibilities to ensure the security of what you store in their cloud infrastructure. They're going to try to do their part, but you could easily break some of their controls and some of their protections by poorly architecting your use of the cloud. If you don't encrypt your files, if you don't use multi-factor authentication, if you don't use endpoint security, on and on and on, all of those things are things that will slowly but confidently break, the security of a cloud. We are over time, and I'm going to disconnect from this. Thank you again for joining us. Hopefully this was informative. Reach out via our website and emails. We're easy to connect with. If you want more information on what we do, you want to recommend students, you have novel technology that you hopefully think that we can make use of on behalf of our customers. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.
Thank you so much, Armando. What a great session. I'm seeing great feedback here in the chat. I really appreciate you. Great talk, great information. Really enjoyed the demos, and people were just amazed at that view of the lab you guys have there. So tremendous job. Thank you so much.